Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Well, I just got out of seeing Us, and I gotta say, I really liked it. I think Red Letter Media explained it best when they said this is the best M. Night Shyamalan movie that was never made, but in a good way. This was actually a good movie. It had twists upon twists, more so than just what they give away in the trailer. I was a bit worried they might have given everything away in the trailer, but no, there is multiple twists, and it's worth viewing again more than one time. So well done to Us, or Jordan Peele, or whatever the guy's name is. Good job, good follow-up to Get Out. But one of the themes that the movie Us brings up, I haven't seen too many people talk about in their reviews, and Us is the kind of movie where it can mean a variety of things depending on who's watching it. And one of the things it meant for me was the issue of nature versus nurture. Now, before I go any further, I'm not really going to be speaking about the movie itself. I'm going to be speaking more about the issues the movie brought up, because you guys, if you watch my channel, you know I like to discuss these things as well. I like to use movies as sort of a vehicle to talk about some of these deeper things that movies bring up. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the movie Us, but I will be going into some light spoilers. Nothing that's going to majorly ruin the movie if you haven't seen it, but I do have to warn you, if you do want to go in completely fresh, perhaps come back and watch this video after you've seen the movie. So what do I mean when I say this movie discusses the issue of nature versus nurture? Well, for those of you who don't know, the question about nature versus nurture, or I suppose you could say genetics versus environment, it's one that's been discussed and debated for a very long time. What really shapes who we are? What makes you the person you are? Your strengths and your weaknesses, are they determined by your genetics, what you inherited, something that you have no say over? Or are they determined by your environment? Are you the way you are because of what you went through? It's a fascinating question, and it has some pretty heavy implications, and Us explores this topic. I'm assuming you've seen the movie if you're watching this, so as you'll know, this movie presents us with a reality in which everyone has an underworld version of themselves, a doppelganger, a tethered, as they're called, version of themselves. But unlike the surface version of themselves, these tethered people, this underclass, has none of the opportunities that the people up on the surface do, despite the fact that they are genetically identical to their counterparts up on the surface. So it seems that part of the social commentary that Jordan Peele was trying to bring up in this was that when we look at an underclass somewhere in the world, we might say, hey, that's where I could be if I were in a different environment. And the movie seems to also be suggesting with the wife, and perhaps even the son as well, that they themselves were tethers at one point, but were able to swap out and just carry on and take the place of people living on the surface world. It seems to suggest that when it comes to nature versus nurture, genetics versus environment, that it's all environment, that any of us put in any environment could change to become something completely different from what we are. This seems to be the side that the movie is taking, that it's all environment, none of it's genetic. I completely disagree. I don't agree at all. I think it's nature far more than nurture. I think genetics plays far more of a role than environment ever does. And the reason I say that is I've done a fair bit of research into twins that were separated in birth and raised in different environments, mostly because of back when I wrote a book, the main character in that finds out that he is a twin who was separated at birth and raised in a different environment from his sibling. So I did a lot of research to see what kind of effect does that have on a character, because I wanted to put it in the book. And from what I found from these stories of twins, identical twins separated at birth, genetically identical as they are, pretty much like in the movie where you have a clone of yourself, but the environments didn't really change them all that much.
Someone at the adoption agency had a crazy theory that twins would be better off if they were separated, so we were separated in part to participate in a secret study on nature versus nurture.
The sisters documented their experiences sort of in a dual journal, their new book, Identical Strangers. In it, they not only talk about their own experiences, but they do try to answer the big question: is it nature or nurture?
I had always thought it was more nurture than nature, and in meeting my identical twin and seeing all the similarities between us, I think definitely each of them play a significant role, no doubt, but nature definitely trumps nurture.
despite their different life experiences, by the time they meet each other as adults, they're basically the same again. They've had different paths to get to where they are, but they're pretty much the same. I can't remember where I heard this, but someone told me that the current thinking is about 80% genetic, 20% environment. But that 20% environment, whether it's a positive or a negative influence, it seems to have more to do with not so much that positive influences drive you in a certain direction, but rather the lack of negative influences help drive you in a positive direction. Like if you have a parent who beats you up, that's going to mess with your development. It's going to mess with your psychology. The absence of that will give you a head start in life. But that's not environment changing your genetic direction. It's just the lack of a negative hindrance. Like me, for example, I'm terrible with maths. I'm just not good at maths. I just don't have a head for numbers. I was terrible at it in school. I was good at other things, namely this, kind of speaking and communicating ideas and sort of crafting stories and stuff like that. So I'm good at other things, but maths was never my strong suit. But my mother at the time thought it was necessary to put me through tons and tons of grueling, close tutoring to try to boost my math score. And to be fair, it did boost my math score a little bit. I went from like D's to like C's, and I hated every second of it because I just did not like math at all. But I realized pretty early on that no matter how hard I tried to improve at maths, I'm never going to be as good as someone at maths who's just naturally got a head for numbers. I mean, me working really hard at maths is going to help a little bit, but someone who's naturally got a head for numbers and works really hard at maths as well, there's just no use me even attempting to get into that sphere. I mean, what's the point? And when you look at a lot of these twin studies, it suggests to a great degree that even the environment itself is influenced by your genetics. We tend to create environments around us that favor who we naturally are. Like if you're naturally inclined towards music, you're going to create an environment around yourself where music is a constant feature. There's lots of instruments, you're going to learn all this stuff. So you create the environment around you that fits who you already are. But if you're not musically inclined, and say everyone else in your family is, it doesn't matter how many instruments are being played around you. You're never going to be a musician because it's just not who you are. So this is where I have to disagree with us. The idea that it's environment alone that determines who we are, I don't believe that for a second. But a lot of people sort of push back on that idea. They think, well, if it's like 80% genetic, or I mean 80%, that's a huge part genetic, may as well just say it's all genetic. If it's 80%, it's close enough. And if it's all genetic, what's the point of any of the environmental stuff? You're just going to become who you're going to become no matter what. So what's the point of anything? Well, not quite. I always think someone's genetics, who they naturally are, should be seen more as a way of seeing which way the tide is flowing. You can swim against the tide and make some progress, but eventually you're going to tire out. It's just easier to go with the tide. You can go a lot further. So it's not a matter of saying that nothing you do matters. It does matter, but you need to swim in the right direction. I think understanding that nature is more important than nurture, or genetics is more important than environment, should be a vital understanding for people to craft their career moving forward. You know, if you want to know what you're good at, look at what your parents are good at. Odds are, whatever it is they're good at, you're going to be pretty good at similar stuff. So that can sort of hone down what you want to do in your life. And quite often you see these helicopter type parents that try to squeeze their kids into a mold that they don't really fit. It's just a waste of time. I think it's better to just see where kids are naturally good at and just encourage that area. But you know, it's not always the parents. Sometimes the kids themselves might want to be in the NBA, and it's like, hey, you're 5 feet tall. It's not for you. Why don't you be a jockey? That'd work. But really, the notion that your genetics are far more powerful than your environment, when you really think about it, rather than disempowering you, thinking that nothing you do matters if it's not in your genetic, it actually empowers you, because everybody's good at something. There's not a person out there on the planet who's not good at something. And the great thing about living in the modern world is you can make a career out of almost anything. So once you accept the reality of your genetics and of nature and of who you are, you can form a career in whatever it is you're good at, no matter how obscure or weird it might be. I think that's a much more positive sort of view to put out there, rather than this grass is always greener on the other side that comes from environment over genetics or nurture over nature that us seems to be promoting. I think we all know someone in our life who maybe has not achieved as much as they wanted to in their life, so they look back and they blame their past environment. If it wasn't for this or it wasn't for that, I'd be a billionaire, or I'd be a movie star, or whatever it is. And it's this constant source of anxiety and anger and regret in them. Whereas if they just embraced who they truly are, they would have been able to find the path that fits them, the shoe that fits, so to speak. So anyway, I just wanted to ramble about one of those themes of the movie Us. Like I said, it's a very good movie. I really enjoyed it. I want to see it again because it's the kind of movie that once you figure out the ending, you want to go back and watch it through again, knowing what you know. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Where do you stand on the nature versus nurture, genetics versus environment issue that Us seem to bring up? I'm Bandit, this is Bandit Incorporated. Until next time, I will see you guys in the comments.